We're the Young Indie Chroniclers podcast, and we're producing a new feature-length documentary, George Lucas, The Lost Golden Age.
George Lucas was going to do this Lawrence of Arabia scale epic on a 16-millimeter budget.
You got a chance to have the same adventure making the show as what Indy was doing.
His stuff is really quite political.
You didn't think I was going to run, did you?
I learned that when George says he wants to ultimately change or fix something, that he was going to do it.
We built a Kickstarter campaign to support the film. Late pledges are available now at Kickstarter.com.
Hello there. Welcome to Force Ghost Conversations. This podcast is your home for cozy deep dives into all things Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent properties. This is your host, Anthony King, and each week I will be joined by fans, creators, and believers in the principles from the galaxy far, far away to discuss the thematical elements from our favorite Lucasfilm properties. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, your cozy home for deep dive discussions into all things Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent properties. As always, this is your host, Anthony King. And boy, do we have an exciting episode here for you all this week. We are talking The Princess and the Scoundrel, the incredible book by Beth Revis from 2022. So we're a couple years late to the party, but it's always a good time to talk about Ewoks partying around the wedding of Han and Leia, and of course, the tie-in to the Halcyon Starcruiser. So if you haven't read the book or don't want to be spoiled to any of the things that happen within it, this is your kind of warning. You might want to pause this episode, go read the book, or check out a synopsis or something like that, and then come right back to this. Or maybe we will, I guess, inspire you to go pick it up and read it. I don't know. There's a couple ways to approach this, and I think it's healthy to actually look at a book a couple of years afterwards to see it in context and greater understanding for how it fits into the Star Wars galaxy, especially a few years later when they're able to really place it into a timeline of sorts. When I say we have a guest here on the show today. We have Karl from the Wampa's Lair back on the show to go all things Ewok and the Halcyon and just really dive into the nitty-gritty of this book. And it's a great conversation. I hope that you all enjoy it here. Before we get into that, did have some news in the Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent galaxy this week here today. And I did want to note that the Mandalorian and Grogu has officially been given a 4K Blu-ray and digital release date. So if you're going to buy the film on digital platforms such as Amazon Prime or Apple, you can do that on July 21st. July 21st, so in just a week here, actually, you'll be able to bring the film home to you. And if you want the physical media collection like I do, which includes the 4-way, the Blu-ray, the 4K, the Blu-ray, and the DVD, those will be available on August 25th. And with the physical media offerings, there will also be special editions. Like there's this best car version, which looks really cool. It's got like a steelbook, some posters, and it will also, this film will also have special features, folks. We're getting special features in a movie that's released in 2026 here, which will include the audio commentary that was available that you might have been able to listen to at the theaters if that was your prerogative. There is a behind the scenes on crafting the movie, some biome stuff, a whole I guess a little mini short documentary on Shikari and how that came to be in the Dejarik sequence. So really cool to see that type of stuff brought back into the fray here for Star Wars. And one more thing on the news front. So we did get full programming announcements for D23, which is coming up here in a couple weeks in August, which we will be at. Force Ghost Conversations will be there. There will be a Lucasfilm Pavilion. That's been confirmed. And there's also been confirmed programming for the Lucasfilm Pavilion, which includes fireside chats that will be at the pavilion. Now, I don't know who or what those will be with. They did say they'll be with the creators and filmmakers behind Star Wars. So who knows exactly what that will entail here. But there is actually going to be a screening at D23 for a special Lego Star Wars production, which is kind of just popping up out of thin air here. It's like we didn't have really a runway with it at all. But it's going to be for Lego Star Wars The Mandalorian. It's going to be a new special that will premiere later on Disney Plus on September 2nd. And it's going to feature segments and stories from the all 3 seasons of the Mandalorian series. So a perfect tie-in, I guess, if you really want to watch Mandalorian and Grogu, which is kind of like a season 4 of sorts. If you want the quick highlights of what the Mandalorian is and the series, also in the quick, fun, special Lego way of doing it, then this is the opportunity for you to really experience that. So it's going to be awesome. We're going to maybe get to see it. Again, I don't know. It's going to depend on, who's the fireside chats, if they announce that information ahead of time. So we'll be on the lookout for that, but maybe we'll be seeing this over at D23 here in just a few weeks here. So that is all the news that I had for Star Wars and the Lucasfilm Adjacent Galaxy this week. Let's get to our conversation with Karl from the Wampa's Lair. Stay tuned. And may the Force be with you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations, your cozy home for deep dive discussions into all things Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent properties. Boy, do we have an exciting episode for you all here today. We are going back to the book discussions here, and we're going to a galaxy far, far away for a wedding and a honeymoon. We are here to discuss 2022's The Princess and the Scoundrel by Beth Revis, a great book, and we're excited to dive into it. And when I say we've got a guest, a returning guest at this point. Because he was so awesome to talk about the Revenge of the Sith novelization, we had to bring back Karl from the Wampa's Lair to the podcast. And Karl, how are you doing? Welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations.
Anthony, I'm so excited to be back here. I loved our Revenge of the Sith conversation. Man, like, you ask great questions. It's so fun to be a guest. It's rare these days that I'm either A, asked to be a guest, or B, have the time to be a guest. And I was stoked when you reached out for the Revenge of the Sith. When you sent me the notes ahead of time with questions, I'm like, this is great. Like, you ask wonderful questions. You've done it again this time. Princess and the Scoundrel is one of my favorite canon books. So super stoked to have this conversation with you. Folks, for behind the scenes, Anthony's a really patient man. I screwed up twice. We were supposed to have this conversation in April. We were chatting a little bit earlier today, and he's like, yeah, I've kind of forgotten a little bit of the details. I've read quite a few books. And I was like, in your defense, we were supposed to do this 2 months ago. So thank you, Anthony, for your patience and waiting for me to get on. And I was so excited. I did another speed reread over the weekend. I love this book. So yeah, delighted to be on here to have a conversation with you.
Well, it's a pleasure having you back on, of course. And I will say thank you for doing a reread so that, it's a little bit fresher of the exact plot details in someone's mind on this episode. I've gotten so many positive comments from people that I didn't even know listened to the podcast about our Revenge of the Sith novelization conversation. So I will give that live feedback back to you that the people are asking for Karl, more Karl on Force Ghost Conversation.
That's very kind of you, but I'm going to deflect that to just the great Matthew Stover. I think you've got there's a lot of fans of that book. Like our mutual friend, Greg Ion Canon Cast, that man is a podcast wizard, and I'm so grateful that he connected me to you. And I know he's on here with some regularity, bringing some wonderful thoughts on Star Wars in general and the novels in particular. So I got to see Greg over the weekend and let him know how excited I was to finally get the calendar correct and be on here properly. And I told him I was excited to reread the book. So yeah, great to know people were listening in on that Revenge of the Sith conversation. That book has such a power in fandom. It's great.
It really does. We were I forget who I was having this conversation with. I think it might have been Dr. Greg Cass, where we made some. I think it was after. So we did the Aftermath trilogy recently on the podcast, and concluded that, I should say. We finished it. We started back in like February and eventually got there. But we kind of ended that discussion with like where do you go if you're like starting into the Star Wars expanded canon, like particularly the books? And because it's so daunting now, there's so many. There's over 10 plus years of new in canon Star Wars stories, and you're like, do you even start with Aftermath anymore? Because there's so many different places to go with that now. And frankly, I think we both got to the idea in our head, whether it was on air or off air, because we kind of continued the conversation afterwards, where we're like, maybe it's the Revenge of the Sith novelization is like the cream of the crop to start with. Yeah. And then you just decide, where do I want to go from here? Do I want more prequel? Do I want sequel? Do I want original trilogy, High Republic? But if you start with the gold standard, which is the great Matthew Stover's Revenge of the Sith novelization, then you almost can say, I'm done reading Star Wars and have a good day too.
Yeah. Oh, man. But Princess and the Scoundrel is a darn good book as well. And sorry for that awkward segue. And here's where I'll make that connection real quick is I think what Beth Revis does such a phenomenal job with in this story is giving you that emotional connection to Han and Leia.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing lots of expanded or like old Legends EU
love it
in the last like year or so, and they will always have a
get those trade paperbacks out.
Oh yeah. But I will say this: one of the biggest detriments to that era of Star Wars books, in my opinion, is how poorly Leia is written. And every author in some way is kind of guilty of it. Nobody really gets her right, in my opinion. Beth Revis, Claudia Gray also nails her in Bloodline. Spoiler alert for what you guys are doing next. But Beth Revis does such a phenomenal job in the same vein as what Stover did with his Revenge of the Sith novel.
Yeah.
Story we already knew. So he took you into the heads and the hearts of those characters. What Beth Revis does with Princess and the Scoundrel is that kind of exact same philosophy of, yeah, you've seen Han and Leia, but I want to tell you who they are internally and what draws them together. And I think that is the strongest aspect of this book is it makes their relationship both believable and understandable in a way that the films just don't, in my honest opinion. You know, like
right.
It's kind of like we're just told to believe that they fall in love. But if you really watch it, I don't know that you can really say that it's there.
Okay.
And that's the way I think George chose to write it. He wanted it to be like this 1940s bickering love story. And I think
it's faster and more intense.
It's faster and more intense, but in a modern context, it's not necessarily a healthy relationship.
No. And this book dives into that a little bit too.
Yeah. But I think what Beth Revis does a phenomenal job with though is not compromising either Han or Leia and who they are as characters, but actually getting under the skin, getting into their hearts. And what is it about this scoundrel character that draws Leia in? And what is it in the heart of this scoundrel that is drawn to this woman of profound intelligence and political connections? Right. What is it that actually brings them together? And I think she does a beautiful job of making you believe that.
I agree. Well, we're already starting to talk about it, so let's dive in further into The Princess and the Scoundrel. So it's been a few years since this book was released. 2022 was the official release year for this book. What did you think of it back in the day? First read that you had of it. I know you have some fond memories of it and some solid experiences with it, but what did you think back then? And how have any of those feelings, if at all, changed since then?
Yeah, freaking loved it from the opening. So real quick, are spoilers welcome?
Yes.
Okay,
dive
cool.
in.
Awesome. But early in the book, when Leia kind of stumbles across the funeral pyre for Vader that Luke had set up, and there's this beautiful line in there where she talks about how her real father, Bail, he belongs to the stars. He's part of the stardust above her, and she is disgusted, but also happy to know that her birth father, Darth Vader, is the soot beneath her feet. And it just moved me so deeply because it's like, oh, that's so powerful. So this book hooked me right away. And I'm a huge Ewoks fan in all the ways. The cartoon, we were just chatting before we hit record about the made for TV movies for Ewoks. Getting to spend the first third of this book at Bright Tree Village warmed my heart. There are profound connections to the Ewoks cartoon in this book that makes me really happy. But I also love how Beth Revis has set this up in your typical Star Wars fashion. It's a 3-act play. Act 1, we're on Endor. Act 2, we're on the Halcyon. And Act 3, we're on Madurs. I think I'm saying that right.
I think we'll go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, the ice planet. But it's just, it moves really well, very seamlessly. I was captivated by the book when I first read it. I will say I still think that the opening act is, for me, still my favorite part and the strongest part.
I would agree.
But I've come to love it even more over time. And it's funny, two summers ago, two really good friends of mine asked me to come down to DC to perform their wedding for them, which I was
Nice.
super delighted to do. So I was just like, you know what? It's summertime. I love reading Star Wars in the summer. So I grabbed Princess and the Scoundrel off the shelf and read it on the way down on my flight, and then finished it at the guest house I was staying at. And I made a post about that, and just again how much I loved it on my reread. I of course tagged Beth Revis, and this is where again one of these wonderful things about social media. And I commented how it was a really lovely thing to read right before performing my friend's wedding. And Beth Revis wrote me a really lovely response to that.
Oh, beautiful.
It's super cool when you can have those types of connections to a creator like that.
Mhm.
And she was like, tell your friends I wish them the best of blessings. Or something. It was like such a lovely gesture on her part. So that of course made me even fonder for this story.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I remember working in one line from the book towards the end. It says, love is like the Force. And I worked that into their wedding. And I asked them beforehand to make sure.
great.
My friends are like mild Star Wars fans. They're like, that's really cool. You can use it very quickly. I was like, you got it.
In and out quickly,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
no one will notice. It'll blip on the heads of everybody
Exactly.
else.
But yeah, I think upon rereads, there is such a fondness for this story. So yeah, but how about you? Like, was this your first time reading?
This
Anthony?
was my first
Okay.
read. Yes. So first off, that's amazing. I was going to ask if you like included any of the story in the ceremony, because I was like, oh, Logray does the
Yeah.
I believe he does the ceremony, and like, hey, like, did you walk it up a little bit?
I really wanted to bring a low gray action figure to put in my breast pocket, but I was like, I'm not going to do that. This is not my day. So
Next time that someone asks for
Yeah, exactly.
a Star Wars themed wedding, Karl is available, folks.
Yeah.
Just reach out. Beautiful. That's fantastic. So yeah, was aware of the book, was a big fan of the concept and idea, because, I think on paper people will be like, well, Han and Leia's wedding is getting turned into it. But no, obviously, Legends has tackled it as well. And it's like, oh, well, I guess, that's the story we really haven't seen in new canon yet. So why not dive into that a little further? Who knows what it could lead to? And we'll talk a little bit later about how it leads into like the Halcyon of it all, and, synergy of the corporation and creating canon around that. So when you're on the ship, you can have an experience that feels similar to what Han and Leia went through, and other people that have been on the Halcyon over the years as well. So I was aware of it. I've been excited to read it. And then a thing called grad school happened. So it was very difficult to read for fun during that time frame.
I can't believe they didn't include that in your coursework. That's
It
ridiculous.
was a shame. Yeah. It's amazing how Star Wars didn't appear in nonprofit studies at all. So although I did work in some nerd fandom stuff when I could, it's truly there when applicable. But anywho, yeah. So when I was reading for fun in breaks, it was quickly devoted to like, all right, catch up on the High Republic. What is the stack that I've missed since like I got a last Christmas break or summer, quickly, like my 2 weeks of summer, because I take a summer class to go get done a little sooner. I quickly run through whatever poor like phase 2 of the High Republic, as I'm just like speed running through it basically to get caught up in time. So unfortunately, because of that, everything else kind of went to the back burner. So in the time since then, which is why I'm doing a lot of these pods now, is me finally tackling some of those books that have been piling up on my shelf over the years that I have not been able to get to. And I remember, I think Amazon Prime Day 2024 or something like that, this book went on sale on Kindle for like $1. And I was like, yeah, well, of course I'm going to get it for $1. That's chump change at that point. It's a steal. I should be giving them more money for this. The value of this book is more than $1 in terms of like what you return out of it. So then bought it. It's been sitting on my iPad, which is where I read from when I read digitally. And then got to this point in April that I was like, I'm finally going to read this. And then, boy, did I quickly read this, I think in a day and a half. It was a delight. A true delight. And I'm glad that you're reciprocating a lot of the positive energy that reverberates throughout this story. And again, like on paper, I'm sure people might have been like, I'm not reading a book about a wedding. I don't need to learn. But there's so much more about the relationship of Han and Leia, and all that's on the table there. And of course, I'm reading it too in an era that is post Halcyon Starcruiser. And, that leads me to like my next question here for you, Karl, which is really about, like, I think cynically one could also say that this novel is somewhat of an advertisement for the now defunct Galactic Starcruiser. And we talked off air, so you don't need to answer. You didn't get to go on the Starcruiser. You know people that went on it.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that if someone were to make that, like, say someone walks up to you at a restaurant and you're talking about the Princess and the Scoundrel or at Celebration, and, you know, they're hearing you and they're like, that's just an advertisement for that. How do you respond to that kind of claim?
Yeah, I think, I mean, a lot of times folks that say things like that, right? Like, let's be real, they're just looking to be disingenuous in their conversation.
Yeah, they really do.
Well, 9 times out of 10, it's like, I don't even want to engage with this. That aside, though, I think it is a valid concern, because also, right, like they did this in one of the Thrawn trilogies that Zahn did, right? Like I sometimes wonder if they kind of
technically both, I guess, because I just read the first one again, and they overlap in at the Batu sequence.
Exactly. But if you just look back on the history of Star Wars, they've always marketed aspects of Star Wars as they're bringing out new things. It's a way of trying to broaden the galaxy and give you opportunities to experience the galaxy, even in our own time and space. I will own the fact that not with this book, but when they did it with the Thrawn book, and I wasn't reading the Thrawn books as they were coming out. I remember thinking, like, that seems like a little bit of a ploy of like, oh, of course, now we're going to sell our Disney theme park in a Star Wars book. But I was even being disingenuous there, because the reality is they've always done this in Star Wars. You know, you look at things like right now, anything that you see on a Star Wars shelf at Target or Walmart or something, right? It's all going to be Mando Grogu themed. Why? Because that's the movie that's out. Yeah, it is marketing. That's Star Wars. Unlike what you do, Anthony, it's a for-profit organization. And of course, they're going to do stuff like this. So I think, right, I can understand those criticisms and that cynicism. And I think there's definitely some validity to it insofar as, like, yeah, of course they're doing this to further sell another product.
Yeah. But
also, I think on the more positive side, it's like they've always done this. Whenever there's a new thing coming out, they're going to want to feature that. When you think about these, like, you know, people love these like guides to the Star Wars Galaxy books, whether it's like a character's version or the planets of Star Wars. Whenever those books come out, what is going to be featured on the cover is whatever is most recently either on the big screen or the little screen. Yeah, and that's how it's always been done. You know what I mean? When Revenge of the Sith was coming out in 2005, anything Star Wars related that was being marketed had a Revenge of the Sith logo or some sort of tie-in to episode 3, because that's what was going on. So Star Wars has kind of always done this. So, you know, like, I can understand the cynicism, but to act like that's new right now is kind of silly, because it's always
I mean, I guess, you know, there's been less overt forms of it, I guess, but to your point, it's always been somewhat intertwined of the synergetic relationship between all of it, right? Whether it's a journey to The Force Awakens, right? It's meant to get you hyped, or if you see the movie and then you're like, great, I want to know more about X character. Oh, there's a little children's book or a novel or something that's going to give me more context into that. Or the movie comes out, or TV show or something like that, and there's a fan beloved character, or say there's a plot point that people don't really fully understand. Then there's another book or something that comes out that then helps to contextualize that more and gives people, you know, that's basically the story of the prequels. Right? I remember a lot of books leading up to like Attack the Clones or Revenge of the Sith, and then the movie happens, and then there's a lot of stories that come out afterwards that try and make sense of, you know, what else happened in there, which, you know, helped work for some people or didn't work for other people. It's totally fine. So I think like that's all on the table here for this. And I wonder, for some reason, and this goes beyond just even Star Wars. This is where you bring in like the Disney community as well into this matter, because it's set at a Disney park and it's tied into the whole park experience of it, where the price tag comes out for the Galactic Starcruiser, and then that immediately gives people like the ammo to like hate on it even more, without recognizing all that goes into it, and recognizing as well that Disney is a for-profit company, very well-known for-profit company that's trying to make money at the end of the day. So add that into the mix, and that's where I think an extra layer of vitriol towards this tale and the Galactic Starcruiser alone comes to be, to the point that, you know, not only is it shut down, but like I've mentioned off air, there have been conventions devoted to this thing, because people are trying to reclaim the narrative and feel community amongst people to be like, hey, like this was real, it existed, and I had such a great time, and I want to spread that gospel of what I witnessed to the world here. So like, it's sad that it doesn't exist anymore, because how cool would it have been now that you've read it a couple of times, I've read it, and then you would be able to go on it and say like, okay, this reminds me of what happened on the Starcruiser when Han and Leia were there, or I'm at the sabacc table that Han was playing at, or like I go into a nook and cranny and this is the secret, I guess, sabacc table that he was playing at as well. So it's just a shame that because of that, it's just we lose that extra layer of fandom because it's gone now, and it's sad. I have no better way to describe it other than that. And it makes me wish that I could have gone on even more. And now it's just YouTube videos I get to watch of other people having fun on it.
Yeah. Well, one of my, I just had a friend out visiting me who did get to go on it. And he found, because they actually have it in it was in the Halcyon. He took a picture of where so in the book, Han carves his and Leia's initials.
Yeah, that's right.
Bulkhead on the Halcyon. And it's there. Like you could see it if you went on the Starcruiser. So, he sent me that photo because it was like, oh, dude, I want to see it. So he was like, yeah, here. He pulled it up for me. So, it's like, it's neat where that ability from the story kind of overlaps into real life. And I think that's what they're trying to give you.
Totally. And then it adds on to that extra layer of what Galaxy's Edge is, which is you get to live out you are a part of the Star Wars world. You're not just walking through it. You are in episode 8.5, at least as it exists now in Walt Disney World, and you get to experience the Rise of the Resistance ride, and you are the reason that Hux is demoted. You are the reason why Legion General Pride is higher than Hux in the barking order in Rise of Skywalker. And you get to fly the Falcon, and you can eat, and like you interact with characters, but you make your story. You are a part of it, and the Halcyon would just be another extension to that, where you get to live out. Oh my gosh! Like I get to see where Han and Leia were, and I know there's comics as well that feed into the legacy of the Halcyon as well. That say like Anakin and Padme were here too, and there's Easter eggs to that as well. Yeah. So it makes me wonder. Like I think it would be a great conversation one day if we can ever maybe talk to Beth Revis about it, but like. Not just the storytelling itself of this book, but I think the writing of it, how it came to be, might be a really interesting tale, because I imagine, like any project is, it evolves over time. And when she's writing concurrently about a project that's being built, and she's like, hey, can you add this Easter egg into how did that work out? Like, did she get told like, hey, we're going to put Han and Leia's initials on this, write it into your book somehow, or go back and forth that way? And like, how many times did she walk through like the space to get a sense of the surroundings and how long it took to get from point A to point B, and how it all just came together. Because at Halcyon, they actually had I'm forgetting their name. I think Will Slimy. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, folks. But they had whoever wrote and drew the Halcyon Legacy comic back in the day there at HalcyCon to talk about it for a full panel. And they were saying how difficult it was because Disney would be constantly changing stuff as they were writing it at the same time. So I can only imagine that was a similar process for Beth Revis. And enough time has passed, she probably processed it enough to be able to willing to talk about it. Well, central to the story is the wedding between Han and Leia. So why do you think it was important to canonize this event? Because I know they talk about it in Legends. So now it's like, hey, this is our definitive version of it as canon exists today, assuming they're not going to change it again in another 30 years.
So, you're referencing the fact that it was obviously in Legends. It's in Courtship of Princess Leia, which is one of my favorite yet most troubling Legends books. Han Solo should never have had the gun of command. That was a horrible invention of the time. But I love Courtship of Princess Leia. Real quick aside, like it's a really fun book, and without Courtship of Princess Leia, we wouldn't have had Night Sisters of Dathomir.
Sure.
Like that's where they're introduced, and they ride Rancors, which is pretty sick. But that book is all about Han wanting to marry Leia, and it's a few years after the events of Return of the Jedi. So they've been having that would they won't they relationship for years now. But that book, Anthony, if you don't recall, it ends. The last page is their wedding. It's barely mentioned.
Wow.
Like it's
complete 180 flip for this one then.
Exactly. And it's like I was saying at the opening, what Beth Revis has done a phenomenal job is telling you why they're getting married. And the Legends recounting it, it's a fun story. It's got lots of cool world building, but it's you don't really learn much more about Han and Leia as people. And I think the way they've canonized it here, and it's kind of answered in the book itself. It's an opportunity to. I'm a college chaplain, so forgive the language here, but it's an opportunity to sacramentalize the joy of Return of the Jedi.
Beautiful.
You know, and that's I'm not using Beth Revis's direct words, but I think she would agree to an extent. I don't know what her relationship with religion and spirituality is, but you know, she makes that point several times at the opening of the book that this is an opportunity for these two characters who are almost like foolishly in love with each other, to make concrete this moment of joy so that they can hold on to it forever. And I think, like, you know, the new canon has indicated that Ben Solo is born within a year of Return of the Jedi. So like, it makes sense that Han and Leia get together very quickly. And we learn, and I think it's the Shattered Empire comic series, which came out not long after Force Awakens, that like Poe Dameron's parents get together in Bright Tree Village, and that's where Poe is conceived. And Beth
Death
Revis
Star falls and people have good times.
exactly. And Beth Revis mentions that reality of what's going on here in Bright Tree Village is people are just falling into each other's arms. There's such an atmosphere of joyfulness. And I also think, like, because, you know, this is coming out just a few years after the end of the sequel trilogy, and you know, for people who are big fans of the big three, like it is a very sad trilogy. Like, we lose them all. And I think we lose them all in very iconic ways. Like, they all go out in memorable ways that I think are consistent with who they are as characters.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of sad. And I think Beth Revis is kind of bringing us back in and saying, like, well, here's this moment of joyfulness that involves all of them. Luke's part of it. The droids are part of it. Obviously, Chewie and Lando are part of it, right? It kind of makes something very concrete that we've talked about, that we've gotten a very minimal story about 30 years ago, almost more than that, probably. So it was an opportunity to take something that we've always known to be true and give it the attention it's always deserved. And I think taking it in a time in fandom where, like, right, I think you and I are both aware, unfortunately, right? Like, fandom it can be a very lovely space, and it can also be a very mean space, unfortunately, right?
Sadly true.
And I think that a book like this does a really good job of reminding you of the joyfulness of Star Wars. And these are two characters that we've loved since 1980, 77 even. But like, giving it the proper attention that it deserves to be a well thought out story of, yeah, these characters are really in love, and we're going to actually pause. And we're going to pause for about 95 pages to flesh that out. And I think it gave them what they deserved at a time when fandom was spending too much time being negative about things. This was an opportunity to be like, let's celebrate what's lovely about these characters. So I really appreciate how the book does that.
I agree for so many reasons, right? I think everything you listed there is absolutely correct, and can't forget the Ewoks. Ewoks are so much a part of this wedding ceremony. So in great detail, right? Between I think the wedding ring is crafted by the Ewoks, right?
Yep. There's a. Have you ever watched the Ewoks cartoon?
Yes, I have.
So do you remember the Sun Star?
I do.
So that orb that is at the center of the Ewok temple, they don't call it the Sun Star, but it's the way it's described.
Heavily implied.
It's exactly like the Sun Star from season 1 of Ewoks. The fact that that's, again, like this really cool Ewok mythology that's been established already. It's very clear Beth Revis knows it and draws that in. Yeah, like, do you remember the Truce at Bakura book?
I do. That was a good one.
It's a fun book, and it also picks up just like this immediately after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
It opens on Endor, but we're there for probably 10 to 12 pages. Like, it's very, very brief, right? And then they run off to deal with this crisis with the Sisiruk. But I think I said that correct. But you know, it's not really letting us be on Endor. Again, we really get to spend some time on Endor, soaking in the joyfulness of their triumph at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, it really makes it so much more of a triumph, right? And I think that's something that people have complained about the sequel trilogy, is that it diminishes, right, the victory celebration of Return of the Jedi. You're like, oh, the First Order survives out of the remnants of the Empire, like it's not fully defeated there. And like, okay, well, there's a whole other reason for that. But I think if you take the time to enjoy this book, as we have, you really get to just bask in the quick, immediate aftermath glow of the victory that is the defeat of the Death Star. And, even though Leia is automatically starting to think, right, we got to do this, we got to, even Mon Mothma is like, hey, you deserve to celebrate here.
Right.
Just to like send her on a honeymoon against her will to relax. I think it's so important to canonize this event in many ways. Like you've already so eloquently put it there. And again, how it compares to the Legends version, right? They just get right up to it here. And I like that it takes place immediately after the events of Return of the Jedi, because it kind of just, like you were saying, it feels like, you see like the VJ Day celebrations from the end of World War II, just like people in the streets getting together, like that very joyous moments and celebratory things. And that's where people would be like, yep, let's just get married. Let's do it. It's no time's better than the present. And it's kind of, that's how this happens. They just domino effect fall right into this wedding here to the point that they don't even think about it. Which I think is so true to Han, and it makes sense for Leia that she would just be caught up in this whole thing, to the point that I want to make in my next point here is like, so much of this book, at least, what I think this book has to say about Han and Leia's relationship is that although there is so much love between the two of them, clearly, this is like, they talk about so much how the absurdity of what they just did in this, and getting married. Like Leia is often, and Han too, is like, I don't even know this person. Like we just got married. He was in carbonite for a year, just got out. And like, when you start adding up all those pieces together, you're like, oh my gosh, everything that I knew about these characters. And like, I assume they just got together without reading. Like you don't need to read the books, to assume that they have like a relationship, that they get together at the end of Return of the Jedi, obviously. But you just like, wow, when you actually like put into technical words what they actually do, it's kind of crazy on paper. Actually everything that happens there. So I'm glad they acknowledge that and recognize that. I think that leads to the problems that they have later on in their life, that it gets fleshed out in further canon. But Karl, what do you think about what this book has to say about the relationship of Han and Leia?
Yeah, I think it highlights the fact that these are very different characters from very different backgrounds, and yet find a sense of completion in themselves in this relationship that it almost makes no sense. And in a lot of ways it doesn't. But there's such an absurdity to love sometimes. And I think that that's what they're yielding to. We were just this past week, Jason and I on Wampa's Lair, we're working through the deleted scenes from the original trilogy right now.
Nice.
And there's a deleted scene in Empire Strikes Back on Echo Base where Han tells Leia that she's as cold as the planet. She needs to learn to thaw out, and he could have been the one to thaw her out, which is funny how she'll be the one to thaw him out.
Right.
But it's this building up this sense that these are characters with very different directives in life. Han has been a very selfish character pretty much his whole life. All right. That's what we are establishing in A New Hope. But we also learn that he's looking for a sense of belonging, and he finds that very profoundly with Leia. There's a great line in this novel where Beth Revis puts it something along the lines of like how Han is reflecting on the fact that he has a home with Chewie on the Falcon, but the type of home he has with Leia is something he never thought he could have.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. And I think this book also is enhanced a lot by the Solo movie. I think movie does a really wonderful job of making Han a lot more than just a cardboard cutout figure, but rather somebody with hopes and dreams and aspirations. So I think this book really like centers you in the fact that that's who these people are. And Leia is somebody who her entire life is about giving her is to being a public servant in all the proper ways. She really genuinely cares about people, and specifically about people who are under or misrepresented.
Yeah.
And that is a huge concern for her. And Han is really drawn to that in her, because it's so different from himself, and recognizes, I mean, we obviously get this sort of in Return of the Jedi without it explicitly said, but the whole fact that he volunteers for the mission without even telling Leia, it's like he's finally bought into the rebellion. He was only there on Echo Base because of his friendship with Han and his flirtations with Leia, but now he's bought into the rebellion. I just quickly looked at this. This book came out just a couple months. 2022 was a great year for Star Wars books.
It really was.
Just a few months before that was probably my favorite canon novel, which is Brotherhood by Mike Chen, which is an Anakin Obi-Wan story. But you get a lot of similar to what Beth Revis was able to do with this book, insofar as humanizing the Han and Leia relationship. Mike Chen does a beautiful job doing that with the Anakin Padme relationship right after Attack of the Clones. Again, it's like a rushed wedding. It is. And he really fleshes that out. And what you see in what Mike Chen does in Brotherhood, which is essentially Padme is this character who's a servant. She wants to help the littlest and the most neglected in the galaxy, whereas Anakin just wants to be a hero. And yet they find a complementary aspect. I feel like, and I'm this is another question I'd love to ask Beth Revis, is I wonder if she had any sort of conversations or collaborations with Mike Chen, because the way she writes Han and Leia reminds me a lot of how he writes Anakin and Padme. Han doesn't want to be a hero like Anakin does, but Han is very much about Han in a way that Anakin's very much about Anakin, whereas both Leia and Padme are people for others. I think Leia finds a sense of grounding in Han, though, too. That like life is very unstable, and she's well aware of that. But she finds a sense of stability and joy in Han. And as you said, Anthony, right? I think one of my good friends, when he finished this book, said that he was like, "Man, he's like, I liked the book, but I didn't." And I was like, "Well, what didn't you like?" And he goes, "Well, it just bums me out because he's like, right? We obviously know where their relationship ends up, and he's like, I feel like this book really sprinkles in the seeds of what's going to happen." And I was like, well, yeah, of course it does. Like it's that's
how every
book.
Relationship is.
Right. I totally get it. So it wasn't like he's like, the book sucks because of that, but like, he was like, it just kind of made me sad that there are parts
a little bit of a downer
that, like kind of hint to the fact that like, they're not going to work out the way this book would hope for that to happen.
Yeah. It's not a fairy tale run off into the sunset wedding kind of experience.
Exactly. But I think it's very realistic that these are very different types of people, but they find such a sense of peace and belonging to each other. And that's what any good relationship is going to do. You can be very different people, but if you find a sense of grounding and you feel that you can become more of yourself and who you are as a person is celebrated, that's a healthy relationship. And one of my favorite little things in the book is, of course, like you were saying, we get Logray giving them their wedding rings at Bright Tree Village, but we're even told at the beginning that they're kind of temporary rings, that they will eventually decay. And Leia loses hers during their adventures on Madurs. And Han gifts her a proper wedding ring at the end of the book, which is the ring she wears in Force Awakens. Yeah. And then wears throughout the rest of the sequel trilogy. So if you remember that ring Leia's wearing when she hugs Rey at the end of Force Awakens, she's wearing it in Last Jedi, she has it on in Rise of Skywalker. That is the ring Han gifts her at the end of Princess and the Scoundrel. It's this, I think that they understand that they are better together, that Han gives Leia permission to be joyful, to actually pay attention to her own needs, and that it's okay to celebrate that. And I think for Han, Leia rounds him out in the sense that like he does really care about people, but he always has done so in a very small way. And I think Leia can challenge and invite him to think a little bit bigger.
Or outside the box.
Yeah. So it's really lovely. Again, like I was saying at the beginning, it does all the right things. And so far as like Beth Revis is very honest and clear about who these characters are without compromising any of it, but also showing why it could make sense that they find each other.
I agree. Do you? I'm curious. I mean, I don't remember at all. Has Disney at all ever sold the ring? Like, have they ever like tried to sell? Because obviously they have sold and marketed the dice well, whether it be from Last Jedi and Solo, of course. But I don't recall the ring ever being a big staking point in anything. And I'm like, that's it's for the for-profit company that is Disney that sells a lot of stuff over there at Galaxy's Edge. I'm surprised that hasn't been one of the things that they've ever tried to like mass market for this. 'Cause I'm sure there's a segment of this huge Star Wars audience that would be all over something like that.
I just did a very quick Google of this. It looks like Target had one.
Target.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure people were making them on Etsy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
some good high quality ones are there.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I've always thought this to be true. I think fans make way cooler stuff than officially licensed Disney stuff more often than not. Like I often
come on,
find
Regal Robot, make a die cast of the actual one.
I mean, Regal Robot does do great stuff. And to be fair, there is some great official stuff, obviously, but I think fans can be so creative, and I often get some of my coolest Star Wars stuff from Etsy, not from Disney created products. But yeah, when you asked me, I was like, you know what, that's a great question, Anthony. So I did a quick Google.
I don't recall, but I'm glad that something exists out there.
I found one at Target, so that tells me that it's got to be officially licensed because
I bet. Target's not selling a third brand.
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't see anything, at least in that. I mean, like I said, I quickly Googled. I didn't see anything though, like from like Disney parks or something. Like, oh my gosh, I'm surprised that you can't pick something like that up at Batu. I don't think
they
so.
sell a lot of stuff there, and I go maybe once a month. I have not seen it in the last 2+ years. So yeah. Missing out, Disney. Lots of money you're leaving on the table there. Unless how many people go to Target and buy that? I don't know. I've never seen it at Target either, unfortunately. So I don't know. Anywho, go into my last question here for you, Karl. Do you want more interconnected stories in Star Wars to places that we ourselves can experience in the real world?
My quick answer is I don't care. I don't want to be apathetic here. Like, sure, but don't need it. Like, so to answer your question directly, do I want more of that? I don't know that I necessarily need it, but I'm not opposed to it. Sure. Ideally to places that I could go where I don't have to save for months. Again, Starcruiser is closed, so it's off the table indefinitely,
sadly.
But even when it was on the table, like it was going to be a stretch. Like you were saying, you pool it with enough friends and stuff. You figure out to beat the system. Yes, you can certainly make it work. But that said, I think at the end of the day, for anything with Star Wars, and again, understanding that it is a for-profit business, especially with Disney owning it, if you're telling me a good Star Wars story and you can find a way for me to encounter that in my lived experience, that sounds great. But don't force a story to sell an experience is what I would say. Because I think, long before, Star Tours has existed since I think the 80s.
87, yep.
Yeah, but I never went until recently because I never went to Disney as a kid. I've only been twice, and they're both as adults. But apart from that, I think we all of us Star Wars fans have been able to experience things about Star Wars regardless of commodified experiences.
Yeah.
Right. Referencing what you were talking about earlier, the Halcyon, right? Is that what it was called?
Halcyon. Yep.
Halcyon, right? Yes, that's obviously bridged around this experience of doing the Galactic Starcruiser. But you know what? That event of fans coming together to just talk about their love of Star Wars and how it affects them, man, that's organic as hell. And you don't need stories to create spaces for that to happen. Tell a good Star Wars story and we get to live there in our imaginations, and then we get to encounter it by talking about it. So I'm less concerned about a direct need of those interplays, because any good Star Wars story is an opportunity for experience and encounter. And I don't think that those need to be commodified in an explicit way. Again, does it hurt to do it? Of course not.
Yeah.
But good Star Wars doesn't require it.
You know, it's interesting because I agree with you 100%. Now I'm thinking the for-profit company is probably not listening to us and is saying the other way, which is like, we will keep investing in immersive properties, whether you like it or not. So looking at it from that lens, perhaps I'm trying to think, and my mind goes to, if it's not the physical, they're going into the digital. And as more and more you're starting to see like headsets and ways for people to fully get immersed in these other worlds that don't exist, but kind of exist because you feel like they exist.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that the next wave where you like? I think there's the Vader Immortal VR story. Yep. There's the Tales from the Galaxy's Edge one. I think there's another one that exists out there. It's more in like the racing world, if I remember. Maybe it's Beyond Victory. I can't remember the exact title of it. But I think that might be the next phase, because only so many people on a daily basis can get to Walt Disney World or Disneyland or any place that they do like a pop-up kind of like experience, right? I'm thinking also like the Scum and Villainy Cantina over in LA as well, like these just kind of pop-up experiences that people feel immersed in a certain world. But if you just buy a headset for a certain fee at home and buy the rights to a game that's an open world Star Wars experience, put the headset on, I'm in a Star Wars for as long as I want to be. You know, that might be the next wave, is just creating this Ready Player One experience for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I don't know if that's good or not. As long as, I think that, like you were saying, the best part about the HalcyCon experience was the community aspect.
Sure.
And I think there's some of that still too when you go to a BAT2, right? You see the characters walking around, you can interact with them, you can see other people interacting with them. You choose your own adventure. I can say, oh, I'm going to go see Chewbacca and hang out and get a picture with him. Or I can just see Chewbacca from a distance and enjoy that other people are spending their time seeing Chewbacca. Or I can go and get a blue milk, or try the various other foods that exist in the Star Wars galaxy. And I know that it's a part of the Star Wars galaxy because I know there are stories that exist, but also I believe it is because I choose it to exist. So I think as they continue to invest further and further into immersive storytelling, which is the way that Disney is going down this pathway, it'll be interesting to see what other things they create in the future, especially with knowing the failures of a Galactic Starcruiser. Maybe they went one step too far on immersive experiences, and assuming that it, you know, because it has the Star Wars title on it, that anything that's Star Wars will be successful and survive. Like, this might be the first major miss, one might say, of the swing and miss of the Disney era, is this failure here. So I don't know. I like when things are interconnected, but I also don't need it, like you said too. Like, it'll be cool to go get let's say, like, for example, if Mandalorian, like, say the meal at Burger King for Mandalorian Grogu was actually a meal that you would have in, like, you saw Grogu eating it in the movie.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, Grogu eats like the popcorn that they sell at we got Galaxy's Edge in the movie. So, like, hey, that's a little fun little Easter egg there, but it doesn't like move the needle forward of like, oh my gosh, because of that, I must eat it.
Right.
It's so pivotal to everything here. So, like, I think the Easter eggs are kind of a fun aspect of this. So it's interesting. I think the engineers, Imagineers over at Disney and Lucasfilm get paid a lot more than I do to investigate in this stuff and do market research into all that. But it's cool if they do, and also I'll take it if they don't. There's so many fun other ways to experience my Star Wars fandom that you know, I'm here for the ride. But otherwise, you know, they continue to amaze me with great stories. Star Wars Starfighter coming out next May, folks. Who knows what comes along with that? Well, Karl, this has been a fantastic look at The Princess and the Scoundrel, celebrating it, frankly. It's giving we're giving it its long due overdue celebration. I don't know if a lot of podcasts celebrated it back in the day, but finally giving it its time in the sun here a couple of years later. And it's you know, if you haven't read it, it's due for a reread. Go check it out. You'll have a blast with it. It's a lot of fun and a lot of great additions to the Star Wars canon as a result of this. But Karl, what do you got going on over at the Wampa's Lair? Where can the folks find you if they want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, we're on the social media platforms at Wampa's Lair. Most active on our Instagram. We're on YouTube, We're on Facebook, Wampa's Lair Podcast. Yeah, to type that in your podcast feeds. As I mentioned earlier, we're right now working our way through the one episode at a time, doing each movie of the original trilogy, looking at their deleted scenes. We did the prequel trilogy a while back, which was a lot of fun because there's a lot of really good deleted scenes in the prequels.
Nice.
But we were like, nobody really talks about the deleted scenes in the original, so let's do those. So we're working our way through those right now and having a good time as we do.
You got the Luke building the lightsaber one for Return of the Jedi coming up.
We're doing Return of the Jedi next week. Yeah, there's some really good deleted scenes in Return of the Jedi. Empires are all really interesting and funny because they're mostly alternate takes.
Yes.
They've been really fun to talk through, and yeah, super and New Hope has some really good ones as well. So we've done that as well, and can't wait to get to Return of the Jedi next week.
So I'm curious, what do you consider deleted scenes to be canon?
That's a great question. Man.
Stumped you.
You really did.
I just gave you a really philosophical question here that's revamping your fandom.
a lot of the deleted scenes, especially from the prequels, are included in the novelization. So then it raises the question, are the novels canon? Because there's a reference in the Revenge of the Sith novel to Dirge from the Tartakovsky series, who is now technically not canon, although I think they worked him into a comic.
But Dirge is canon now, yeah. Yeah,
he is now, but he wasn't in 2003.
But his appearance in that isn't canon.
Right.
So convoluted.
Yeah. Well, in the A New Hope novelization, Obi-Wan shares that Owen is actually his brother.
Yep.
So, right, like, get into, I guess I would say if it's not on screen, it's not canon when it comes to the movies. Thinking through but the majority of deleted scenes, both from the prequels and the originals, they're cut mainly for timing and pacing. They're not necessarily cut for canon content.
Yeah, George isn't caring about that.
Yeah, and I mean, I would argue, especially with some scenes from Revenge of the Sith being cut, really weakened the story. Notably, the Padme scenes and the formation of the rebellion. Like cutting those scenes were, I will say to this day, like that is the biggest mistake George made with Episode 3. To me, yeah, the movie's plenty long. You know what? You cut all the CGI crap on Utapau. I don't care about Utapau in the least. That is the dumbest part of that movie. And you know what you do? You minimize that because it looks like a fancy computer game, and you give us some actual character moments where people are forming a rebellion to this rising tyranny. That's far more important than chasing a stupid clone general on a hover drain. Or spinny wheel. Like, yeah, obviously I have strong feelings. I'm sorry, Anthony. Utapau does literally nothing for me. So,
canonized. I mean, we talked off air about Mask of Fear, but they do talk a lot about the delegation of 2000 earlier.
Yes, they do.
So definitely canonized that story.
Yes, thank goodness, because that is an important story. Chasing Grievous, not an important story. So, Grievous will run and hide like he always does. He's a coward. Yeah, we get it.
It's all to get to Order 66. That's really what it is, and have Obi-Wan off world.
Yes, and I get it, but it didn't need to be. It didn't need to be 10 minutes of the movie. I'll tell you that.
It's so that they can have more scenes in the Revenge of the Sith video game. That
sure.
Give
and
you
it
the
felt
two
like a video
quests
game on the big screen. So, yeah, I apologize. I'm such a butt when it comes to Utapau stuff. Like once we get to hello there, General Kenobi, and they fight, I'm all set there. That's all I needed was that segment, and then
fifth level, thousands of battle droids.
Ty and Madon, the real glove shitto of that movie. Huh?
Yes. If you have warriors, now's the time. We'll have to have Karl on for a specific episode talking about that particular scene of Revenge of the Sith. Just to get
the parts of the Star Wars movies that trouble you the most, but be positive. Like I feel like that's a healthy challenge for folks.
yes, it would be. The world would be a better place if they actually approached it in such a positive manner to like try to be positive about stuff. I think people would look at Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker so much more differently if they actually tried to give it that kind of touch. So anywho, it's been a pleasure, Karl. Folks, go check out Wampa's Lair. Go support them. It's a fantastic podcast. And of course, Karl, you'll be back on when we can find the right book, the right episode, the right topic. Maybe Utapau. Maybe we just do a deep dive like we were talking about here. Maybe it's Utapau month, the month of Utapau. I don't know.
Utapau month. You know, as long as we can bring in the scrapped Clone Wars arc from Utapau.
That's right. That's right. Who can forget?
That is some great content. I'll tell you what.
They really miss out on Obi-Wan going, I remember this from a year or 3 months ago when I was last here. Utapau. Oh, I remember that place. That's where we talked about the Kyber crystals with Anakin. And he said he would never leave me, right?
Right.
Beautiful stuff. Well, folks, thank you again for listening to this episode. Go check out Princess of the Scoundrel 2. It's a great book. And guess what? Next week, we've got a wild episode for you, folks. We're going to try and see how long we can talk about the George Lucas cameo in the recent Minions and Monsters movie. So you've been forewarned. Go check it out in theaters. It's a very quick cameo, and see how long we can talk about it, because we're going to try. We're going to try and see how long we can go. It's going to be our wackiest episode to date, so I hope you all enjoy it. And until then, may the Force be with you. Take care.
Thank you.